Hey, welcome back for day 4 of my series, Evolving Your Mindset. I was thinking just a little bit ago while I was preparing for tomorrow's live streams. I think for a lot of us, our businesses grow up and we don't, right? So we get our businesses started, we get them past the startup. Things are working better and better and better. In fact, we have good, solid businesses, and yet we are often still sort of approaching them, managing them, leading them with a really immature mindset. And really, so that's what all of these live streams have been about. That's what my new book. It's what I've been most in interviewing podcast guests, both recently and really for the whole 3 years that we've been doing the podcast now. So I'm really interested in what it takes to create that more mature, more sophisticated, more productive and effective mindset as a small business owner. And so that's what we've been covering these last 4 days. If you're just joining us, if this is the first time you've been on one of these live streams with me, well, welcome, first of all. And second of all, good stuff waiting for you. So if you go to crowdcast.io/co-commercial, you can see all of our past events, including our 3 previous mindset live streams. We did one on updating the vision for your business. I did one on why I think charging what you're worth is bonkers and how it's keeping your business stuck. Yesterday, what did we talk about yesterday? Yesterday, we talked about the difference between magic and technology and how really what you're doing in your business is building an advanced technology, which is really exciting and very cool. And when you figure out what that advanced technology is and you put it in business, you can do some pretty extraordinary things. Today, we're going to be talking about failure and how not to take failure so personally. And for me, this is probably the most kind of close to home mindset topic that I'm going to be talking about in this particular series. This is something that I struggle with on a regular basis, and I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. But first and foremost, if you're here on Crowdcast joining us live, I'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat. We've got a few folks already done that. And if you've been enjoying these live streams, I would love for you to hit the share button that is above the chat right now and share it with your friends, your colleagues, the business owners in your life who could benefit from these kinds of conversations about some of the things that we don't talk about as much, some of the things that aren't maybe quite as sexy as the latest marketing, sales training, but that are actually way more key, in my humble opinion, to the success of your business than those things. So if you have been enjoying this, I would love for you to share it. And if you're joining us on Facebook, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, come on over to Crowdcast and join in the conversation. You can find us at crowdcast.io/co-commercial. You can find today's event there as well as tomorrow's 2 events there. And I highly recommend registering for those as well. Okay, so let's dive into today's topic of how to stop taking failure so personally. I am teaching this one as I'm living it. So I actually Googled a whole bunch of motivational quotes about the power of failure. I had considered starting off by just kind of just running off a whole bunch of quotes about how important failure is to business ownership, to entrepreneurship, to success in general. And then I thought, no. Don't do that. That is dumb. That's not helpful. No one needs to hear that. We all know that failure is supposed to be good for us, right? We have all heard that the more you fail, the more you'll end up succeeding. The more no's you hear, the bigger the yes will be in the end. Like, we know all that stuff. I don't have to tell you that stuff. It is horribly cliche at this point, and it doesn't matter that it's cliche because it's true. We're tired of hearing that because the real problem isn't actually failing. It's not letting people down. It's not, missing expectations. It's not missing your goals. That's not actually the real problem. The real problem is how emotionally kind of dangerous that is for us as leaders and creators and business owners, as entrepreneurs, because when we take failure personally, when that inevitable failure comes, and we end up internalizing it and turning it into all sorts of yucky feelings, that stops us from being able to effectively lead our businesses. It stops us from being able to make great decisions. It stops us from being able to make it up to people, being able to rise above the challenge and actually do something with it. So the real problem isn't actually failure. You know, failure is an important part of the process. The problem is how we deal with failure. And that's what I really want to address today. Because I think that a lot of us, and I'm absolutely seeing it in the comments in the chat already, a lot of us deal with a lot of shame around failure and a lot of negative feelings around failure. And those negative feelings end up holding us back business-wise. So I think the reason that we take failure so personally as small business owners and entrepreneurs is because we are so personally tied to the results that we create with our business, whether those are personal results, the amount of money you make, the number of people on your list, the number of products that you've put out, or the number of clients that you served, or whether it's the results that you create for your customers and clients. I think we get really attached to those results. And in fact, in my my book, Subtle, I talk about how that really is a whole mindset that we approach our businesses with often in the beginning. It's an attachment mindset. We're attached to results. We're attached to outcomes. And frankly, we're attached to a whole bunch of things that are completely out of our control. And when we inevitably fail at things that are out of our control, we end up kind of really internalizing that failure and making ourselves feel bad, or using that as a judgment on our personal worth, our worthiness, and really our ability to create success in the future. Now, it's like I said, this is the topic for me that hits closest to home out of everything that we've covered so far in this series. I deal with a real emotional response to failure, to letting people down, to missing out on my own expectations, to not following through on what I say I'm going to do. And I have a real habit of really beating myself up, which is a huge problem because at the same time, all of that is true. My own personal goal setting style is actually built on failure. The way I like to set goals and the kind of goals that motivate me are really big goals. I don't mind. In fact, I kind of thrive on biting off more than I can chew with the goals that I set. And the reason that I do that is because I know that it takes big goals and big vision for me to change my behavior. My behavior, my kind of patterns of the way I act, the way I show up, they're really deeply ingrained, especially with as long as I've been in business now. And so if I don't set bigger goals to get me to rethink that behavior and to give me the motivation to change that behavior, I end up falling short of reasonable goals because I just do the same thing that I've always done instead of actually changing anything. So looks like there might be some internet issue or some video issues. I am so sorry if it's on my end. Hopefully, not hopefully it's on your end, but hopefully some people are getting a good stream. I always recommend refreshing if you're having any challenges. So my goal setting style is really based on a comfort level with failure. And I suppose when it comes to goals, like to failing to reach my goals, I'm pretty okay with that. Although, I mean, if we're being honest, I'm really not. And it still causes me a lot of stress. I can beat myself up. I can get down on myself. Where I find I have even more challenge though, where the failure really starts to get to me is when I let people down, whether that's letting down my customers and my clients, whether that's letting down my team members, it might be letting down my family, the people that kind of count on me to be a leader, to count on me to step up and get stuff done. When I let people down, that's the kind of thing that I take incredibly personally. Sometimes, yeah, there's something I could have done differently. Other times, oh no. So it sounds like we are having some issues audio visual wise. I'm going to keep going. Hopefully it'll clear up. But yeah, I'm going to soldier on. Okay. So, anytime I end up letting someone down through my behavior, through my actions, through stuff that's out of my control, that's when we start to take things personally, and it can land me in a funk, in a bad mood, for days and days and days on end. It can cause me to completely shut down and not be able to show up to do the next set of work that needs to be done. It can cause me to change my plans, to pivot before I really should be pivoting, and just all sorts of things that end up creating bad results, business-wise for the future, and personally as well. So this really is a mindset shift that I am personally absolutely still in the midst of. So what happens when we take failure personally? What happens in our businesses? So first and foremost, we have a tendency to over-deliver. I think that this is an problem in the small business owner world. When we fixate on not letting people down, when we fixate on always delivering results, whether there's extra circumstances or not, we tend to always step in and try to make things right. We add on extra sessions, we schedule extra time, we send out extra emails, whatever it might be. We try and do more to avoid failure, to avoid letting someone down, to avoid, a project just not going quite the way that we want it to. Another thing that often comes up is that we end up pivoting too soon. In other words, because we tend to take failure as a hard no, or as a reflection on our worthiness or our ability or our skill level, we say, oh, I missed that goal. I didn't get that product done. It didn't perform the way that I thought it was going to do. My service didn't perform the way I thought it was going to perform, whatever it might be. And then we end up moving in a different direction much sooner than we really should. We don't keep pushing past that failure. We don't look at what we could do differently to make a different result in the future. Another thing that often ends up happening when we are trying to avoid failure and when we're fixating on the wrong thing is that we do it for the likes. In other words, the likes on Facebook, the likes on Instagram. In fact, preparing for tomorrow's live streams, I was looking back through my Instagram feed and thinking, okay, if I was fixating on the likes, if I was doing my Instagram feed specifically for the likes, what would be the kinds of things that I would be posting? And so I looked back and I saw, or I went to find what my most liked picture was. And no surprise, it was a picture from my wedding day this summer. And probably the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth pictures were all wedding or engagement ring related pictures. If all I wanted was likes, I know what I could post. I could just post lots of wedding pictures. Now, obviously, that would have diminishing returns and I wouldn't get any business results out of that. But I think that we do actually do those things on a regular basis. We kind of see, oh, that got a lot of likes. Oh, that got a lot of attention. And we assume that that is a success. And we go out there and we chase that because those little things, those vanity metrics make us feel good, and it makes us feel like we're further away from failure, when really every time we chase a vanity metric, we're getting closer and closer and closer to it. And then the last thing I think that can happen, although there are probably plenty of other bad results from taking failure personally is that we end up being a people pleaser. So whether that includes over delivering, or whether we're people pleasing on coffee dates, or whether we're people pleasing for our team members, always making excuses for people who are underperforming and holding you back, or always kind of trying to change your so that someone else gets what they want. That's another kind of result of taking failure personally and not really looking at it for what it is. When we're really attached, when we're in that attachment mindset, it's very easy to change everything that you're doing to make other people happy, so that you can get that positive result of their happiness or their satisfaction. So what's the mindset shift that we need to make here? How do we stop fixating on avoiding failure and stop taking things so personally, and start finding a more productive way to use failure in our businesses and finding a more productive way to approach it? So the mindset shift, as I see it here, has to be away from attachment to those results that we can't control and toward a mindset of analysis. And this goes back to what we talked about yesterday, actually, that difference between magic and technology, that process that's really at the heart of your business. An analysis mindset helps you identify what is actually working or what is actually not working in your business. And it has nothing to do with you. An analysis mindset focuses on the process that you are using to either get the results that you want, or the process that's not creating the results that you want. And when you are in that mindset, you can analyze the process is either succeeding, how it could be tweaked or edited to make it better, how it can be adapted to get you closer to where you want to be. So the important piece of this puzzle. We can stop taking things so personally when we stop assuming that it's us that's either making things happen or not making things happen. You can stop taking failure so personally when instead you realize that there is a process that you're working that can either get results or not get results. The other kind of the other side to this is really making sure that you're focused on the right results. Earlier, I mentioned vanity metrics, and vanity metrics are a huge scourge on the online small business world because vanity metrics are all around us. Vanity metrics are things like Facebook likes, shares, comments, Instagram likes, DMs in your Instagram account, even email subscribers can be vanity metrics if you don't know how you turn them into a metric that you actually want. So in order to make this mindset shift, you really have to do two things. First, put the attention on the process instead of on yourself. So because if you're looking at the process, it's kind of impossible to take failure personally because the failure is the process's fault, not your fault. It's a beautiful thing. And then second, make sure that you're focused on results that you actually have control of, that you actually have a business interest in. Those could be results for your clients, or they could be internal results for your business as well. Okay. I did also want to share before I see there's a question coming in. And if you have more questions about today's topic, go ahead and use that Ask a Question button under the video area. I'd love to get to those. And if you're watching live on Facebook and you've got a question, come on over to Crowdcast. We're at crowdcast.io/co-commercial. And I'd love to get your question from there. Okay, so there was a story in the book that I really wanted to share with you, because if you kind of take nothing else away, if you don't read the book and you take nothing else away from these 5 live streams, I think that this story is so important. So this story actually did not come from a podcast interview. It was one of the very few examples in the book that I didn't source just directly from podcast interviews I'd already done. Instead, this story came from an email that I received in response to the writing I was already doing on the book. And it came from Jackie Powell, who's just a a phenomenal photographer. You can find her at JackiePowellPhotography.com. I think that was the URL, but it's Jackie Powell Photography for sure. And Jackie was telling me how very early in her career, she experienced a lot of kind of pain in the process of getting her business started, starting to take pictures for clients. And really what was happening is that there were a lot of people who weren't very happy with the pictures that they received from her. And she said she took it extremely personally, that it was a really painful situation for her, that she felt horrible every time it happened. But at some point in this process, she made the realization that there was something else going on. She noticed that, people were not coming prepared for their photo sessions. They were coming with wet hair. They were coming with makeup without makeup, or with makeup that didn't work well for them. Their outfits were wrinkly. They didn't have a concept of what they actually wanted. They were just showing up and hoping that Jackie could make all the magic happen. You know what I think about magic. Okay. And so what Jackie realized she needed to do was take the emphasis off the complaints or the missed expectations, take the emphasis off of that, or go the emphasis from that was on her photography skills, and instead realize that it was a reaction to her process. In fact, there were just parts of her process, necessary, important parts of her process, that were missing. Things like telling people, don't show up with wet hair, or here are some makeup tips for you, or here are the kinds of outfits that you should bring. And, here's how to make sure they're wrinkle free, or things like actually having a makeup artist there in the studio so that people didn't have to worry about it. Maybe she has a steamer available so that, she can spot steam garments if they're not showing up well on camera. But what she did was really take the disappointment that her clients felt early on and use it as information to create a process that now always produces results, that now never lets anyone down. And in fact, not only does she have happier clients, of course, with beautiful pictures, but she's making lots more money. Her percentage of, or her growth in sales is absolutely through the roof. And it's thanks to this process of just taking a little bit more care on how she can help people have great results, instead of just relying on magic or hoping for the best. And so that's how Jackie kind of stopped taking that failure, taking that disappointment, turned it into a real boon for her business. Okay, so I'm going to pop into these questions now. Gigi's question is, I feel like I just cannot get a routine or system to deliver content due to the learning curve, and I feel I am falling behind on serving my audience. Any suggestions? Yeah, I think if I understand this question, when I see this being the biggest issue for people, it's when they're trying to do all of the things content-wise, or all of the things social media-wise, or all of the things visibility-wise. So they're trying to be on Facebook, they're trying to be on Instagram, they're trying to publish to their blog, they're trying to do a podcast, they're trying to serve their members, they're trying to do all of the things, right? And that is nearly impossible. In fact, she says, "Oh, you're so right." Yes, I know. I have seen this so many times before. The trick here is that you can't get a process down to do all of the things. You have to start your process with one of the things. So what's the one thing that you can commit to? Maybe it's weekly emails, or maybe it's weekly emails and a weekly blog post, because really those two things are one and the same. So you commit to writing one blog post per week, and then creating an email that goes out to tell people about that blog post and asking them to share it with their friends. And that's all you do. And you get really, really good at just that. You nail those steps. You tweak that process so that you know every blog post you put out has a really good shot of creating a customer for you, of helping you reach someone new in your audience or in your potential audience, whatever that result might be. But you get really good at just that one thing. And then once that process is down, then you can add something else on. Maybe you start doing Facebook Lives, or maybe you start doing Crowdcast Lives, or maybe you do something else, but you pick one other thing and you add that in and you get really good at that thing too. So that's how I would solve this problem. And like I said, this is something that's really, really common. Not entirely sure this is related, but I feel like sharing it anyhow. I was saying to Sean the other day that I feel so bad for people who are just getting started now, because like I said, I've been doing this for 10 years now. I got started with my very first website. Well, my very first post-college website in 2009, January 2009. So just a couple of weeks out from my 10-year anniversary of my first website being launched. And when I was getting started, there were certainly people talking about making money online. There were certainly plenty of online businesses out there. There were lots and lots of bloggers, but there was a real sense of kind of making it up as we went. Like when I got started, my main source of revenue was advertising. I didn't have a mailing list for the first 9 months of my business. And I still made more money than I made in my old day job. And so that was, it was really easy to kind of layer on one thing at a time. I started with Facebook and kind of out, and then I started on a mailing list 9 months in. Like I said, well, I guess really I started with blogging, then Facebook, then mailing list. Really worked hard on that mailing list piece, got really good at that. Then some of the other social media platforms were starting to make a move, and so we'd add things on, we'd experiment, but it was a lot more manageable, and there wasn't any expectation of getting it perfect. And you didn't have to get it perfect. And guess what? You still don't have to get it perfect. So what I'm trying to say is that I think that now there are so many people out there telling you that you have to do all the things, and that if you don't do them professionally enough, and they're not beautiful enough, and they're not and you haven't spent enough money on them, that somehow you're not worthy of having a popular business or building an audience. No, that's BS. Complete BS, complete and utter BS. If you look at some of the profiles, say on Instagram or on Facebook, that explode, they're not super duper professional. They don't have a strategy, but they're committed to doing one thing and one thing only and figuring out what works. And that, Gigi, is exactly what I think you need to do too. The way you're really going to understand the process is the only way you're really going to be able to use your skills for analysis and procedure is if you focus on one thing. You can't have a system for all of the things. That's multiple systems. So focus on one system first, get good at one thing, make that commitment to deliver on that week after week after week. And from there, I think you're not only going to see better results, but you're also going to create a sense of confidence that allows you to, again, not take failure or letting people down or missing a week so personally. This is a good one from Jennifer. She says, what advice do you have for when the failure comes in the form of silence rather than complaints? Such a good question. Okay, what advice do you have for when in the form of silence rather than complaints? So I think that the advice on what to do next is honestly about the same. You want to identify your process and what's not working and make adjustments. The thing about what you're making adjustments for, though, is to get of response. You want to tweak things or keep trying things, experimenting with things until you get some sort of response. Then you can ask yourself, is this the response I want? Is this a helpful response? Is this a not helpful response? But the issue with silence is that it's not information. It's still information, just not super helpful because it doesn't give, it just shows you what's not working, which is like, okay, duh, that's obvious. So instead, you just want to keep kind of cycling through, trying new things until you get some sort of response. Even if it's just one or two people saying, hey, that was cool, or, oh, I love this idea, whatever it is, that's the goal, some sort of response. When you have two people saying, oh, hey, this is cool, then your next goal is to figure out how to get 4 people saying that, and then 8 people saying that, and then 16 people saying that. And you got to realize, of course, that's not a linear progression. That progression is going to look like this, right? It's going to be insane. Some things you try are going to backfire, but it's still the process that you need to be working. Don't assume that you're not good enough, that the product's not good enough, that the service isn't good enough, that the idea is not good enough, that you're somehow not worthy. Don't assume that. Assume there's something wrong with the process until you've exhausted all of the options for tweaking the process. And trust me, none of us are. So that would be my advice on that. Okay. Any other questions for today's topic or anything that we've covered over the last 4 days? Go ahead and use that ask a question button under the video area. In the meantime, let me give you a heads up on what we've got coming for tomorrow. Tomorrow, we are doing actually 2 different live streams. So the first one is at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, nice and early. West Coasters, I still expect to see you there. Bring your coffee. We're going to be talking about balancing sort of our natural inclination as entrepreneurs, as sellers, to be very self-reliant and get things done on our own accord, and balance that with a real need to ask for help and to ask for support. Because I think this is a really important mindset to embody as a growth-minded small business owner. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the morning. In the afternoon, we're going to be doing sort of the climactic workshop of this whole series. It's called 3 subtle mindset shifts that create big business results. So I'm going to be going in depth on 3 of the most important mindset shifts from my new book, Subtle. And I would love to see you there. It's probably going to be about 90 minutes total between questions and me just talking a lot. And there'll be a slideshow for that one. So if following me while I wildly gesticulate, you might like the workshop a lot, but so it'll feel a little bit different, and we're going to cover a little bit more material in that particular workshop. So you can find both of those by going to crowdcast.io/co-commercial, and if you're here, you should get an email about those as well, and I look forward to diving into both of those. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for your questions and your comments, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.